It is 1270 AD. Europe is once again ready for war in the name of the cross. The Holy King of France, Louis IX, has left on his last mission, but this time not the land of Jerusalem, but the hot desert of North Africa. Tunisia is going to be the battlefield. Was this last major effort of the Crusaders successful? Was Louis IX ready to make the greatest sacrifice of his life? Or did this crusade turn out to be another tragic chapter in history? In today's video, we will take you on a journey where religion, politics, disease, and death all collide. The complete story of the 8th Crusade in just this video. The Eighth Crusade was the second crusade launched by Louis IX of France, launched in 1270 against the Hafsid dynasty in Tunis. It is also known as Louis IX Crusade against Tunis or Louis's Second Crusade. There was no significant fighting in this crusade, as Louis died of dysentery shortly after arriving on the coast of Tunis. The Treaty of Tunis was concluded between the Crusaders and the Hafsids. There was no change in the territory they held, although the Christians were granted commercial and some political rights. Soon after the treaty, the Crusaders returned to Europe. A brief introduction to the Hafsid dynasty. Before proceeding further, we highlight the political situation in Tunisia, where this crusade took place. In 1270, Tunis was ruled by the Hafsid dynasty. The Al-Hafsian dynasty was a Sunni Muslim dynasty of Berber origin that ruled Africa, including modern Tunisia, western Libya, and eastern Algeria, from 1229 to 1574 CE. During the reign of Caliph Al-Mustansir 1277 to 1249, the Hafsids strengthened and expanded their power, whose capital was Tunis. After Al-Mustansir's death, internal strife led to the division of the dynasty that ruled Tunisia. Reunification took place under Abu Yahya Abu Bakr, but his death was followed by another crisis during which the Marinids, based in present-day Morocco, briefly invaded. Eventually, the alliance was re-established by Abu al-Abbas Ahmad II, 1370 to 1394, establishing a reign of Hafsid power and influence throughout the region, which continued under Abu Faris Abd al-Aziz II, 1394 to 1434, and Abu Ammar, 1394 to 1394. After that, his strength gradually decreased. During the 16th century, when the Ottoman Empire occupied the region, the final Ottoman conquest of Tunisia in 1574 ended their rule. The Hafsid era in Africa was a center of significant cultural and intellectual activity, encouraged by Abu Zakaria Yahya's decision to welcome Al-Andalus immigrants. The medieval historian Ibn Khaldun was born in Tunis around this time. Hafsid architectural patronage included, among other things, the first madrasas in the West. The situation of Holy Land. Despite the failure of the Seventh Crusade, which ended with the capture of Louis Nahum of France by the Mamluks, King Louis did not forget the humiliating defeat of the Crusade. He continued to send financial aid and military support to the Outremer settlements from 1254 to 1266, with the aim of eventually returning to the Holy Land. The Seventh Crusade officially ended on April 24, 1254 with the return of Louis XIV of France from the Holy Land. He left behind Geoffrey of Surgeons as his representative with the official position of seneschal in the Kingdom of Jerusalem. The head of the kingdom was John of Abilene, who succeeded his cousin John of Arsuf in 1254. John of Arsuf returned to Cyprus where he remained as regent for Hugh II of Cyprus. Hugh II claimed both the kingdoms of Cyprus and Jerusalem. The death of Conrad II of Jerusalem in May 1254 left the nominal crown of Jerusalem to his 2-year-old son Conradin. Before his departure, Louis arranged an armistice with Damascus, which was to last until October 1256. Sultan Aybak of Egypt also signed a 10-year truce with the Franks in 1255. Jaffa was expressly excluded from the armistice, the Sultan wanting to secure it as a Palestinian port. Aybak later negotiated a new treaty with Damascus that was mediated by Caliph al-Mu'tasim. The two Muslim leaders renewed their truce with the Franks, this time including Palestine and Jaffa. Controversy over St. Sabas. The Outremer states had to contend with various Italian merchants engaged in the Battle of St. Sabas. The three rival Italian cities of Genoa, Venice, and Pisa dominated the Mediterranean trade by capturing all the outermost ports. There was a long-standing conflict between Pisa and Genoa. And in 1250, a Genoese merchant was murdered by a Venetian, leading to open fighting at Acre. When Louis returned to Europe in 1254, the conflict was revived. In 1256, commercial rivalry broke out between the Venetian and Genoese merchant colonies over the possession of the monastery of St. Sabas in Acre. The Genoese, aided by Pisan merchants, attacked the Venetian quarter-zippers and burned their ships, but were eventually repulsed by the Venetians. After that, the Venetians were expelled from Tyre by Philip of Montfort. The Venetians were supported by John of Arsuf, John of Jaffa, John II of Beirut, the Knights Templar, the Teutonic Knights, and the Pisans, while the Hospitallers' Knights supported the Genoese. In 1257, the Venetians conquered the monastery and destroyed its fortifications. The Genoese quarter was cordoned off. In August 1257, John of Arsuf tried to end the war by granting trade rights in Acre to Genoa's Italian ally, the Republic of Ancona, but with the exception of Philip of Montfort and the Hospitallers, the rest of the nobles continued to support Venice. Queen Plaisance in Acres. Queen Plaisance was co-ruler and regent of both Cyprus and Jerusalem. In February 1258, she came to Tripoli with her 5-year-old son to visit her brother Bohemond IV in Antioch, later being taken to Acre, where the Haute Cormeting of Jerusalem was called, and Bohemond asked her to confirm the claim of Hugh II as next in line to Conradin, who had been absent from the kingdom for a long time. It was requested that Hugh be recognized as a royal power and Plaisance as regent. The Hospitallers declared that no decision was possible in Conradin's absence. Thus, the royal family was engulfed in civil war. The Venetians supported Plaisance and his son. Philip of Geneva, the Hospitallers, and Montfort supported Conradin. A majority vote recognized Plaisance as regent. He and Bohemond then returned to Cyprus and directed his command to take decisive action against the rebels. After this, there followed a period of bloody conflict between the Christian kingdoms, whose partisan states included Tripoli, Antioch, Acre, and Imbriaco. Byzantine recapture of Constantinople. The inconclusive outcome of the Battle of St. Sabas had ramifications beyond Syria. The Latin Empire of Constantinople developed a lot with the help of Italian trade. To counter Venice's control of both Constantinople and the Aegean Islands, Genoa supported Michael VIII Palaeologus, Emperor of Nicaea. Michael laid the foundation for Byzantium's recovery through his victory at the Battle of Pelagonia in 1259, where William of Valhardin, along with all his barons, was captured and reduced to fortresses in the eastern half of the peninsula. In March 1261, Michael signed a treaty with the Genoese, and on July 25 his forces entered Constantinople with the help of the Genoese, dissolving the Latin Empire that had arisen from the Fourth Crusade. Regency of Cyprus and Jerusalem. Queen Pleasance died in September 1261. His son Hugh II, then 8 years old, needed a regent, a co-ruler. Hugh II had two paternal aunts. The eldest was Mary of Lusignan, who married Walter IV of Brian, who died young and left a son Hugh of Brian. The younger, Isabella of Cyprus, was married to Henry of Antioch, brother of Bohemond V of Antioch. Isabella's son Husum was older than his cousin, and Isabella raised them both. Hugh of Brienne, although next in line to the throne, was unwilling to compete for the regency against his aunt and her son. After some deliberation, the High Court of Cyprus appointed Husum as regent. Isabella died in Cyprus in 1264, and the rulership of Jerusalem was again vacant. Husum of Cyprus claimed it, but now Hugh of Brian has counterclaimed. He argued that it was the custom in France that when an older sister's son claimed, he was given priority over a younger sister's son, regardless of whether the cousin was older. Outremer's jurists rejected this argument and decided that Husum should wear the crown. The nobles and nobles of the state accepted him unanimously, and he handed over the government of Acre once more to Geoffrey of Sargent. Baybars in the Holy Land. Baybars came to power as a military commander. He was among the commanders of the Egyptian forces who defeated the Crusaders in the 7th Crusade and was in the vanguard of the army at Ain al-Jalut. It was the first significant defeat of the Mongol army and is considered a turning point in history. Baybars vowed the complete destruction of the Kingdom of Jerusalem. He rebuffed several Frankish attempts at unity. Baybars became sultan in October 1260 and quickly suppressed opposition in Egypt and Syria. Baybars strengthened his position by fortifying the coastal cities of Egypt and forming alliances with Michael Palaeologos and Manfred of Sicily to better understand European intentions. He also formed an alliance with Bark of the Kipchak Khanate and its vassal Clay Arslan IV. Baybars' campaign in Syria and Armenia. Baybars continued his war against the Crusader kingdoms in Syria. In 1263, he first led an unsuccessful siege of Acre. He then marched on Nazareth, destroyed all Christian buildings, and purged the city of Latin priests. His next target turned out to be the fall of Arsaf in April 1263. In 1265, he attacked the city and fortifications of Haifa, again destroying the fortifications and resulting in the fall of Haifa. Soon after that, he captured Caesarea as well. In 1266, Baybars defeated the Armenians at Mari. After that, Baybars destroyed the three great cities of Mumstra, Adana, and Tarsus. The country was already devastated when Haytham arrived with Mongol forces. Haytham had to negotiate the return of his son Ludum to Armenia by giving control of the Armenian border fortresses to the Mamluks. In 1269, Haytham abdicated in favor of his son and became a monk. Siege of Safed. Safed, held by the Knights Templar, was located on the banks of the Jordan River, from which the movement of Muslim troops in the region was noted. In June 1266, Baybars began the siege of Safed and captured it in July. Beavers completely wiped out the Templars. On capturing Safed, Baybars did not demolish the strategically located fort, but captured and fortified it. Odo of Burgundy was also killed fighting in the same attack, the commander of a crusade of 50 knights. As early as October 1266, Clement IV mentioned the fall of Safed when ordering a new crusade to be preached. He also arranged to send a regiment of crossbowmen to the Holy Land by March 1267. Siege of Antioch. The defeat of Silesian Armenia in 1266 drove Antioch and Tripoli far away. Baybars continued to destroy the remaining Crusader strongholds in the following years. In 1268, Berbers besieged Jaffa, which belonged to Guy of Abelin, son of the jurist, John of Abelin. After a 12-hour battle, Jaffa was conquered on March 7, 1268. From there he proceeded to the Principality of Antioch and began the Siege of Antioch. The Antiochian knights and garrison were under the command of Simon Mansell, constable of Antioch. The city was captured on May 18, 1268. The Eighth Crusade. After his victory at Antioch, Babarus paused to recover his conditions. The Mongols were restless, and there were rumors of a new crusade led by Louis Nahum. Husam of Cyprus requested a ceasefire, which was accepted by Babarus. In 1266, Pope Clement sent letters to the Kingdom of Germany ordering the Dominicans and Franciscans to preach the cross against the Babylonian Sultan Babarus, the Pharaoh of Egypt, and against the Saracens abroad, to relieve the sufferings of Christians and support all the people there. By September 1266, Louis Nahum decided to take up the cross once again to lead it. He had always hoped to set out again on a crusade, but the needs of France were pressing. The following year, exhausted and ill, Louis began to prepare and make the necessary arrangements for his second crusade, raising the necessary funds. At the Feast of the Annunciation and before the relics placed in the Sainte-Chapelle, Louis Nahum and most of the great nobles of France took up the cross once more. This date was March 25, 1267. 1267, Crusader War. The Crusade of 1267 was a military campaign from the Upper Rhine region to the Holy Land. It was one of several small crusades of the 1260s. The Mongol Khan, Abba wrote to James I of Aragon in early 1267, inviting him to join the army against the Mamluks. Meanwhile, Pope Clement IV died in November 1268 and Gregory X was elected the new pope, who ordered James to raise funds for the crusade. On September 1, 1269, he sailed east from Barcelona with a powerful force, encountering a great storm, causing King James and most of his fleet to return home. Only a small force under the king's two illegitimate sons, Pedro Fernandez and Fernand Sanchez, continued their journey. They reached Acre in late December, at which time Sultan Baybars broke the truce and appeared before Acre with a large army. The Aragonese immediately wanted to attack the enemy, but were stopped by the Templars and Hospitallers, as the Christian soldiers were too few. Geoffrey of Sargans died in April 1269 and was succeeded by Robert of Cresqui. His French regiment, now commanded by Olivier de Termes, was ambushed against Babarus's troops not far from Montfort. When the Muslim forces retreated, Oliver de Termes wanted to return to Acre without requiem, but Robert of Crescent insisted on an attack. Then they fell into an ambuscade laid by Baybars, and some of them were killed and some managed to escape with their lives. Preparing for the crusade. Louis Nahum decided to launch a new crusade against Tunisia, along with the liberation of Jerusalem. According to Geoffrey of Beaulieu, Louis believed that Muhammad I al-Mustansar was ready to accept Christianity. The crusade was scheduled to depart in the early summer of 1270. This campaign included 19 ships of Genoese and 20 ships of Marcellus. Louis's initial plan was to land on the Outremer coast via Cyprus. However, the final plan was drawn up in 1269, with the fleet first to attack Tunis. Although Louis had limited knowledge of Africa, he was religiously fervent and ignorant of the political aims of his ally Charles of Anjou. Financing the war was, as always, a challenge, with Louis bearing the brunt of it. Clement IV also allocated a tithe of church income in Navarre to support the Crusades. Campaign and death of Louis IX. On July 2, 1270, Louis departed from Aegis Mortes. The fleet was led by Florent de Vernes, the first admiral of France, appointed in 1269. They set out with a very large, well-organized fleet. Louis was accompanied on this expedition by his brother Alphonse, his wife, his 3 surviving sons, Philip III of France, John Tristan, and Peter I of Alençon, as well as his nephew Robert II. Also in attendance were Robert III of Flanders, John I of Brittany, and Hugh XII, all sons of former Crusaders, as well as Guillaume of St. Paul, John II of Switzerland, and Raoul de Susan. This army was smaller than that of the 7th Crusade. The army included 347 knights from Louis's own household, and the total army was estimated at 10,000. On the southern coast of Sardinia, the decision to attack Tunisia was announced, causing panic among the troops, who were told they were going to Jerusalem. However, he was satisfied with the assurance of the king. After a week in Cagliari, the army marched in preparation, landing at Carthage without much resistance on July 18, 1270. On July 21st, the Tower of Galito was captured and the army settled in the field of Carthage. Genoese sailors captured the fort and slaughtered the inhabitants, using it as a base of operations. Both sides now played a waiting game, as Louis did not want to repeat his mistakes in Egypt in 1250. He did not want to risk a major battle until the arrival of Charles. The Sultan was safe behind his castle walls and did not want to allow the Franks to attack openly. This wait-and-see policy eventually cost the Crusaders. The Tunisian heat and the lack of sanitation and fresh food destroyed the campaign. The Crusaders became plagued with disease, especially dysentery. Among the many dead was Louis Nahum. Louis IX, King of France and leader of the Crusades, died penitent in his bed on August 25. Philip III became the new king, but his coronation was delayed for a year. When the king's death was being announced, Charles I's fleet arrived at Tunis. After a few skirmishes, Charles took the initiative to negotiate for peace. Sultan Muhammad I al-Mustansar, on the other hand, was suffering the same fate with his army. Both sides were in the same situation. Tunis Agreement. The Treaty of Tunis was signed on November 1, 1270 by Philip III of France, Charles I of Anjou, and Theobald II of Navarre for the Latin Christians, while Muhammad I al-Mustansar represented Tunisia. The agreement guaranteed a ceasefire between the two armies. The treaty allowed Christians to trade freely with Tunisia and guaranteed housing for monks and priests in the city. Sultan Baybars cancelled his plan to send his Egyptian army to fight the Franks in Tunis. The treaty was very beneficial to Charles. He received a third of the war indemnity from the Tunisians and promised the expulsion of the Hohenstaufen refugees in the empire. The Crusaders left soon after, and the Eighth Crusade was over. Participants eye in the end of the war. In this campaign, King Louis IX died of plague. His brother John Tristan died first on August 3rd, and the king died on August 25th. Philip III, at the age of 25, was proclaimed king. He was a party to the treaty between the kings of France, Sicily and Navarre, and the Caliph of Tunisia. This defeat was followed by other deaths. In December 1270, Philip's brother-in-law, Theobald II of Navarre, died. In February, Philip's wife, Isabella, fell from her horse while pregnant with their fifth child. Isabella, Theobald's widow and Philip's sister, also died in April. Philip III arrived in Paris on May 21, 1271, and paid homage to the deceased. His father's funeral was held the next day. The new sovereign was crowned King of France in Reims on August 15, 1271. After the war, the day before the Crusaders left Tunis, Edward also arrived with the English fleet. Now with the peace treaty, the English returned to Sicily with the rest of Louis's army. On November 22nd, the combined fleet was wrecked in a storm near Tarpani. In late April 1271, the English continued their journey to Acre to advance Lord Edward's crusade. This campaign is known as the Eighth Crusade, the last of the great crusades in the Holy Land. As a result of this war, poets wrote satirical poems about Louis's new plan to attack Tunisia. O Louis, Tunisia is Egypt's sister. Like her, expect your trial here. Instead of Ibn Luqman's house, you will find your grave here, and instead of Khwaja Sabi, Munkar Nakir will come here.